For this part of our review, we are going to start with slope. And so remember that slope is the change in y over the change in x. And so if we go to look at slope, we're going to say that that is our y value, -2, minus our other y value, 4, over our change in x, which would be 3 minus a -1. And then we reduce that slope to lowest terms, and that'll be a -3/2. So negative slope, we know that this line is decreasing. Keep in mind that we always check at the beginning to see if we have a vertical or horizontal line. And if we do, we can identify the slope of that before even calculating anything. So what I do is I look for repeats in my x or my repeats in my y. And if you look here, we see that in this next set of ordered pairs that we have repeats in the x coordinate. And so we should know that this is a vertical line and it has undefined slope because all the x values are the same. And so we can immediately just say that the slope is undefined. Now, if we forgot that, and if we want to do the slope formula, we would start with our change in y over change in x. And we would have that this is 4 minus 2 over -5 minus a -5. And we would see that division by 0. And when we see division by 0, we know that we don't divide by 0 and that our slope is undefined. In our next problem, we're going to find the slope also. This time, we're going to find it by counting. Now, even before I begin, I know that this is going to be negative because what I have is a decreasing line. And so I'm going to locate 2 points on this line. I see one here and one here. And so therefore, I'm going to count my rise over 1. I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3. That'll give me a -3. And then I'm going to count to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. And therefore my slope is a -3/4. If I look at the next line here, I immediately know that since this is a vertical line, undefined slope, all the x values are the same, this would be undefined. If I forget that, I could look at this and say, well, there's a point here and a point here. If I wanted to take and write a ordered pair for this point would be the point -3, 2. This point would be the point -3, -3. If I then wanted to take and just figure out the slope between those 2 points, I can see that to move from one point to the other, I am going to move it doesn't matter if you say that you're going to move up or you're going to move down, because what's going to end up happening is we're going to divide by 0. So if you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you'd have a +5, but then no moves to the right or the left. If you counted down, you would have a -5, but still no moves to the right or the left would leave us with undefined. Now, if we change the directions just a little bit, and instead of saying write the slope, let's pretend it said to write the equation that you see in these two graphs. So if we look at the first one here, our slope was -3/4, but our y-intercept was right here at 4, so the equation of this line would be y equals negative 3/4 x plus 4. Over here, every x-ordered pair, every x point would have an x value of negative 3. And so therefore the equation of the line has to be x equals negative 3. So remember, we want to be careful about the difference between if we're asking for the slope, which would be negative 3/4 or undefined, versus the equation. In our next one, it asks us to write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the point negative 5, 1 and has a slope of negative 1. Well, looking at this, this is going to be a point slope problem. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so if we substitute in what we know, y minus our y value equals our slope times x minus our x value. Remember, those minus and negatives turn into a plus. This is point slope form. And now we need to change this into slope-intercept form. Same 2 steps as always. We're going to take and do the distributive property. And then we see that plus 1, we're going to subtract 1. And there's our line in slope-intercept form. Looking at our next problem here, it also asks us to write slope-intercept form. But this time we get 2 ordered pairs. So I've got to first start with finding the slope. So I'm going to do my change in y, negative 2 minus a negative 5, over my change in x, 6 minus a negative 3. And my slope will be 1/3. I'm then going to take either one of these 2 points, and I'm going to have to use one of those points and the slope to do point slope form. So if I select this first point here, I'll have y minus a negative 5 equals 1/3 times x minus a negative 3. And this is point slope form, but the directions ask us for slope-intercept form. And so we're going to have to take and do the distributive property. And then we have a plus 5. We're going to subtract 5.